welcome back to my channel. My name's Charlie if you're new, or Charlotte, and if you're coming back to my channel, thank you so much for returning. So this is another instalment in my Chats with Charlie video. I've honestly started this video, this is my third time trying to start this because I feel like I keep stumbling over my words and not getting things out in the way that I want to. And I think it's because this video I've wanted to make for a long time, and I actually think I'm a bit nervous now that I'm sat down making it because it's very close to home, it's very fresh, and it's still very raw. But I do feel as though I'm in a good headspace to try and talk about things now, and it is something that I have wanted to talk about for some time. So the topic of today's video is addiction. With these Chats with Charlies, my intention and a huge part of why I do YouTube is to talk about taboo topics and break down stigmas on a multiple different topics. And I've done that about relationships, friendships, sex, revenge porn, all those kinds of things. But the biggest taboo topic and the biggest conversation that I've wanted to have surrounds addiction, because addiction has been part of my life for the past 20 plus years. My story with addiction is not a personal one in terms of like I myself don't have this addiction, but living with it, growing up with it, seeing it day in, day out is, I don't know why I feel emotional. It's been a huge part of my life. And I'm only getting upset because it's raw and it brings up a lot of emotion. Because it's been something that has been at the forefront of my mind for the past 4 or 5 years. Right. I promise I want to make this video. I know it seems like I don't, but I do. It's just hard to talk about, but that's the reason why these conversations should be spoken about, because they are hard, but talking about it tries to break down the stigma and could really help people, and that's why I do this. So the addiction that I'm talking about, I can't remember, I don't know if I've mentioned it, like I said, I've tried to start this video a few times and it's just come out really incoherent, is alcohol and alcoholism. And obviously, well, I say obviously, for me it's obvious, but my dad is who I'm going to be mainly speaking about today. He is the person that I have seen with this addiction, and for me addiction is a disease. It's something that although you can choose to pick up a drink and choose not to, it really is something that can take over somebody's life and take a life. And I think people think of an alcoholic as somebody that just gets pissed all the time, and I think they think of an alcoholic as that person in Wetherspoons who is like an absolute mess, goes to the pub every single day, and is like a lowlife. I honestly think that's my perception of what people think and what I hear about. Oh God, she's a right alkie. He's a real alkie. Like, this term alkie, this stigma built up around an alcoholic, to me is so far from what I know it to be, and is not a representation of who my dad was. So in my mind, when I hear the term alcoholic, there's a difference. There's alcoholic and alcohol dependent. An alcoholic is, my uncle said to me that really, if you look at what classifies an alcoholic, it's somebody drinks over the amount of units that you're meant to have per week. And if we're going off that, the majority of the UK are alcoholics. We all drink to more than what we're meant to. So if we're looking at somebody who drinks too much, majority of the UK, that's who you're looking at. But if you're looking at an alcoholic, an alcohol dependent, it's two very different things. And my experience with addiction and seeing my dad with addiction is somebody that was an alcoholic for 20 years, but alcohol dependent for 4 or 5. The last 4 or 5 years he's been alcohol dependent. And that there's a real difference between those two terms for me. And I think if your parent or somebody or yourself, if you're doing something more than what you should. So growing up, I've always known that I've been aware that my dad likes a drink more than what the average person does. I've always known that. One of my first memories is when I was at my childhood home, and it was New Year's Eve. My dad come back and he was a red wine drinker. And I remember coming back, and he, from this New Year's Eve party, remember Dad throwing up on the drive, and because he was a red wine drinker, the sick was red. Sorry if you don't like talking about vomit, but that's just what I remember. And I was terrified because I thought, oh my God, look, it's blood, and it wasn't. Obviously, it was just wine, and that was like one of my earliest memories. And I've known growing up, because you watch what's normal, and then you get to know what is normal and what's not normal. And I knew that the relationship he had with alcohol wasn't normal, but it never got to the point, and like the past 4 or 5 years aside, it never really got to the point where I was seriously concerned. I was always worried, and it did bring a lot of embarrassment, because you just see somebody lose control, and it's unpredictable what's going to happen, and they've had a drink, so like, what are they going to say, what they're going to do, like. And I think there's a lot of anxiety around watching somebody have an addiction. And I actually do remember there was a long time period where I hated going to pubs. I hated them. I didn't want to go to them. It just made me feel really uncomfortable and made me feel really anxious. And I think now I know that stems back from that worry, and pubs didn't have positive connotations to me. I just saw it as somewhere that I just didn't want to be, didn't get it, don't understand it. And it took me a long time when I was 18 and everyone was going out drinking and going to the pubs. It took me a while to really understand that just because you've seen an unhealthy relationship, like somebody's unhealthy relationship with alcohol, doesn't mean that that's my relationship with it. Just because they don't know where their limit is or when to stop doesn't mean that I don't know that. And I am not a big drinker at all. I'm a huge lightweight. I'm very glad that I am. And I really have contemplated a lot over the years, and especially in the last 6 weeks, whether I even want to drink at all. But I think if I was just to stop drinking because of the experience that I've seen other people and my dad have with alcohol is really just not, I don't think I should like prevent myself from drinking because of that relationship I've seen. I don't know if this makes any sense. I know my limits. I've seen what it does to people, and I know I'll never be like that. I'll never let it get to that. But yeah, seeing somebody with an addiction brings constant worry. And yeah, it's something that I've known he's had for the past 20 years. I've known that he drinks too much, but the alcohol dependency is only coming out in the past 4 or 5 of those years. And like I said, there's such a huge stigma surrounding being an alcoholic and being alcohol dependent. You think and you're told that there's so much help out there for somebody that is alcohol dependent, somebody that needs help because of the amount they're drinking. And it's not until you're in that environment or you're not in that situation where it's like you need the help that you realise how difficult it actually is. And it's frustrating. Like, there's no words to really, there's no way to comprehend or concise the experience that I've had over the past 4 or 5 years in one video. I mean, my whole notebook is full of like counselling sessions that I've had and the notes that I've made, and all of it is surrounding my dad's alcoholism. And I've been in and out of counselling for the past 3 years. And this video is not at all for people to think, oh, I feel so sorry for her. I'm not looking for sympathy. I really am just trying to hopefully bring a conversation to light that perhaps I think hits home with a lot of people. And I remember watching, I think it was Joey Graceffa's video about his mum was an alcoholic and his experience with it, and I just thought, I can't believe he's making this video. What is his mum going to think? And I've so many times I've thought I want to make a video like this, but what my dad think. And it's sad really that I'm making it now and it's too late, but I couldn't have made this video when he was alive because I know the guilt he would feel watching this. So now it feels right to talk about it. Yeah, the help that is presented, that is out there, AA meetings, rehab, counselling, yes, it is all out there. The AA meetings, we've been there, done that. It actually made my dad feel worse, he'd say, going to them. Counselling, the amount of times you can recommend to somebody a counselling service or a helpline, but unless that person wants help, there is nothing you can do. And that is the hardest thing to try and get your head around. For me, that was the thing that I struggled with the most, and why I have been in counselling is because you're watching somebody slip away because of their addiction, this disease, this illness. And if that person does not want help, there is no way you can force them unless they are a danger to themselves or other people and you are wanting to get them sectioned. There is no way. We've looked at rehabs. They're expensive. Unless you've got the money to go private, there is not much that you can do. And if that person does not want to go to rehab willingly, there is nothing you can do. They will not take someone into rehab who will continue drinking, or somebody that doesn't want to go, because there's plenty of people out there who do want to go. You can't force somebody against their will to get help, and that is the hardest thing and the hardest pill to swallow, is this helplessness. And with this helplessness comes so much guilt, because you are just watching somebody slip away and there's nothing you can do. Obviously, I feel as though it's obvious, but perhaps it isn't, is what this all stems down to is the link between addiction and mental health. And there are so many people, I would honestly say 99% of people that have an addiction, the addiction's there to suppress something. They're suppressing something with their addiction. And if they don't want to get to that root cause, if they don't want the help, if it's too painful to get the help, they will just keep on suppressing their mental health with this addiction. And that was alcohol with Dad. He was suppressing a lot with his mental health. And I think this has been, that has gone from the past 20 years of like suppress, drink, and that can only go on for so long. And you hit a period where it's like you can't suppress anymore. You've kept a lid on this box for so long, and it's starting to, everything inside this box is starting to seep out now, and you can't stop it. And when it starts seeping out more and more and building, this lid on this box that you've been keeping shut for so long is starting to become ajar. It's like it's like a water fountain that just like it just comes and there's no stopping it. And I think for me that's what I saw in my dad, is that he had this lid on this box of mental health and traumas that he was suppressing. And over those 20 years, this box and this lid has like loosened a little bit. Something's happened, it's loosened, he's had a wobble, and he's like bolted it back shut and suppressed. And then it's got to a point where it's happened for so long that this lid has loosened, the bolts are coming loose, they're old, they're rusty, you've been suppressing for so long, there's only so much that, you know, there's only a matter of time before this is going to explode. And it did explode about 4 years ago. And when that happens, and your mental health is just, you don't know how to deal with it, you've been trying to suppress it for so long, and there's nothing that you don't know how to suppress it anymore. So then that links with your addiction, your mental health, how you knew to suppress is not working anymore. So if you can't do it in the way that you used to, you up your antidepressant, which is the alcohol, to try and suppress more. So if it was red wine that you used to drink, it's like, okay, I'll do 2 bottles of red wine and a bottle of vodka now. So then that will try and keep the lid on the box just for a little bit. And again, it's only a matter of time before that lid wants to come off that box again. You know, the bolts are going to go rusty, everything's going to get loose, everything's going to explode again. So how are you going to suppress it again? The only way to try and stop this box from overflowing is to face head on everything that's in that box, to face your traumas, to head on face everything you've been suppressing. And if you just can't do that, then there is nothing you can do for that person. And I think that for my dad, his box, there was no lid, he'd completely lost it. He has no idea how to put it back on, how to suppress. He doesn't want to face it, he can't talk about it. So the only thing to do is just suppress with the alcohol, drink until you just are in a daze of like, you don't really know what's going on. And then it's only a matter of time before your body just gets to the point where it's like it's had enough. And that for me is how I make sense of it. For me, that's why I genuinely have not really felt that guilty since his passing, because I know I have done absolutely everything I can to try and get him to get help. And you cannot force somebody to get help if they are not ready to accept it. And at the same time as you're seeing somebody go through this and see somebody with addiction and struggling with their mental health and turn into addiction more and go from an alcoholic to alcohol dependent, you see them lose sight of normality a little bit. So that could be losing a job, losing a house, not leaving the house so much. And for me, that again was one of those things that made me just have to take a step back. And I had to, and it's so important that you do if you're somebody that is living with somebody with addiction, or a child of an alcoholic, or a child of somebody that is a drug addict, or substance abuse, or whatever it is. If you are a child of somebody that has an addiction, there's this really weird role reversal that they go into this childlike form of they need help, they don't know what to do, this helplessness, that you then adopt this adult role of, right, well, let's think logically. You need to do this, you need to do that, we can do it, I've got you, you can lean on me, we've got this together. And there is this role reversal, and for a long time there was that role reversal with myself for years. But it gets to a point where you have to put yourself first, and it's extremely hard to get to that point where you realise that there's only so much you can do, and you have to then take a step back and look at your own mental health, because that is just as important as the person who has an addiction and their mental health. And for me, it did get to a point over the past few years, I'd say really over the past year, I tried through counselling, and what I've been taught is to set boundaries. My boundaries is that I felt uncomfortable being in this person, in the presence of somebody, of my dad, when he had a drink. It made me feel uncomfortable. So I will choose to leave when I feel uncomfortable, because along with watching somebody battle and see their addiction, and this is again another hard reality, is that watching somebody with addiction change, you start to grieve the person that they were prior to all this, prior to the addiction. So I was grieving for who I knew to be dad years ago, because it got more and more. Every time I would see him, it wouldn't be sober dad, it would be drunk dad. Drunk dad is different to sober dad. So you start to grieve for that person, because you don't know if they'll ever get back. You're not seeing any signs that anything's going to change. They don't want the help. You're so desperate for them to get the help, but everything's stagnant, nothing's changed, everything's the same. If not, it's getting worse because it's gone on for X amount of time. So then you do get to a point where it's like, well, so what? Is this the relationship I've got with them for the rest of my life? Is this how it's going to be? Because I don't know if I can do this. How much longer can I do this? I don't know. So then you get to a point where it's like, I need to reevaluate my mental health, actually, because I've been so worried about this person that I've not taken care of myself. Am I okay? Actually, probably not. No, I'm not okay. And it's probably over the past year that I've realised that I've not been okay. I've not been taking care of myself. My mental health is suffering. I am depressed, I'm anxious, I'm worried all the time. Every time my phone rings, I think it's going to be that phone call. Every time I see an ambulance, I think, is this it? So then you need to start setting boundaries and putting yourself first. And for me, those boundaries had to be set. I had to take a step back over this past year, because for my mental health I needed to. And it was only, I think, maybe 3 weeks before my dad passed, I had a conversation with him and said that I am really struggling at the moment, Dad. And I had a breakdown. I had to have a few days off work because my mental health just got to a point where I just couldn't. And I think people understand that. You just get to a point where you just can't. I just can't with life. Everything's too much. I just can't. And it got to a point where it was too much to see him in person, so I would do FaceTime. I'd FaceTime him all the time because in-person visits were too much. And for me, that was, yes, I'm in PJs. That was part of my self-care, that was part of my boundaries. I knew it was too much for me to go and see him in person. It hurt too much because, again, you see that sober person, drunk person, and it's just a constant reminder of, one, how much they're suffering because they're having to suppress so much. I think that makes sense. So you have to set boundaries and put yourself first, and if you are in a similar situation, you at some point you are going to have to put yourself first, because the only person who can decide that they want to change their life is you. You can't force somebody. If I was a puppeteer and I could control everything, things would be so different. I would have got him help years ago. If I could control him and make him do what I wanted him to do, things would be so different, but you can't. The only person that can decide they want to change their life is you. And as much as he had tried, I can't make him change his life or want to change or go to therapy or go to rehab. I can't make him do that. What I can do... All right, Alexa. What I can do is ensure that I don't get to a point where I've lost control myself of my mental health, and then I don't know what to do, because what good am I going to be to him if my mental health's all over the place? So you have to set boundaries, you have to put yourself first. If counselling is the way to do it, go to counselling. I find that talking helps a lot. That's why I do these videos. That's why I am open about counselling, mental health, addiction, everything, because for me it helps. I watch videos like this and I like to create videos like this. I do genuinely think it helps. You need to talk about things. And there is this massive stigma around alcoholism and addiction, and the struggle and strain that it puts on relationships, because it's hard sometimes to differentiate the fact that when I wasn't in his company and I took a step back, then I would feel sorry for him and I would see the disease. But when I was in his company, and it would irritate me because I could see that he was drunk. I could, you're having a conversation, but you're also evaluating everything that's going on. So you'd be looking at, have they got the lines around their lips from they've got a drink? You're looking around seeing how many bottles there are. What state are they in? Are they slurring their words? And you're losing focus of the conversation because you're scanning everything else to evaluate the situation. And you'd feel irritable. I'd feel really irritated and angry and annoyed. Why don't you want to change? Why do you always have to get drunk? Why don't you want more from your life? So it's hard to try and differentiate sometimes between the addiction and the disease, and the mental health and the addiction, because I would get so angry and annoyed and pissed off, and then I'd get upset when I'd just seen him because everything's come to the surface. You can't bury your head in the sand because it's in front of you. Then when I'd come away from it, I'd feel guilty, I'd feel horrible. Anything they would say, you wouldn't believe them. Are they telling the truth? Are they lying? But maybe they're not lying. Maybe they are telling the truth about what they've said. Maybe they're just trying to protect you and be that parent. And then it gets to a point where sometimes you think, you need to be cruel to be kind. Maybe I should tell them what I'm thinking. If I do that, I'm going to tip them over the edge. Do I be honest? So maybe it will be a wake-up call. Maybe it will shock them into reality of what's going on. But if I do that, am I going to tip them over the edge? Are they going to then drink more because of what I've just said? All these thoughts are things that I've had so many times, and I know that if you are going through this, if you experience this, that it's normal. And I'm not the only person to feel like this. Although you probably feel like you are, you're not. Ultimately, talking can save lives. Having open conversations is the first step for somebody to potentially get help. And if it's not the person with the addiction trying to get help, it's the people trying to help, the people experiencing the addiction, like the family or friends of somebody. There's help groups and talking groups for families of somebody who has an addiction. And they're created for a reason, because although it is about the person with addiction, the person with the mental health issues, that doesn't just affect that one person, it's a domino effect. The effects that this has on one person affects 20 other people because of what this one person has experienced and the way that they're dealing with it and how they're struggling. And obviously, it's very easy to see that the realities is obviously the addiction affects more than just the person struggling. In my case, my dad isn't here now because of his addiction, because of his struggles and his mental health. And that has impacted over 100 people that wanted to come to his funeral and came. It didn't just affect Dad. Just because he couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel has now impacted us all. And I don't think it's selfish for you to think, oh, it's not about me, it's about him, it's about the person struggling, it's about the person with addiction. Yeah, it is about them, but it's equally as important to recognise when you are struggling, that you need help and that you're not okay. Because like I said, if you realise that, what help are you going to be to that person if you're not looking after yourself as well? You're just as important as the person struggling with the addiction. And it's important to have these conversations and to recognise the importance of talking and the struggle and strain that addiction can have and the realities of it. It's not just somebody who's a low life who sits in Wetherspoons and gets pissed all the time. It's somebody that is, somebody that's worked all their life, somebody that was in the armed forces, a dad, a friend, somebody that was well loved. It's not just the people that you see and think, what a low life, what an alky. It's not just that, it's so much more. It affects so many more people than what you realise. And I felt the need to talk about it and to try and break down those stigmas. I do feel like I've spoken about most things that I wanted to get through today. I have no idea if any of this has made any sense. But I really do hope, and just to reiterate again, that by making this and being open and having these conversations, that I've at least helped one person, if it's somebody with an addiction themselves, if it's somebody that is got a family member, if they're a child of an alcoholic, or somebody that they've lost to an addiction, that they don't feel as alone. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I know that's a strange thing to say and almost a weird place to end the video, but although ultimately addiction beat my dad, he didn't beat the addiction beat him. The fact is that I will never stop talking about him or about these topics, because it's just because he's not here anymore doesn't mean that other people are not still struggling, and it's not still just as important now that he's not fighting those battles. It's equally more important now because the addiction beat him, to keep on talking and bringing awareness and break down the stigmas of people that have addiction or that struggle with alcoholism or drugs, substance abuse, whatever it is, to keep on talking. And yeah, there is light at the end of the tunnel, although it's now this is the worst case scenario for me, but I am okay, I'm functioning, I'm talking, and I need to continue and get through this and talk about it and try and live for the both of us now. And yeah, it's a real hard lesson to learn, but ultimately I've seen the effects of what happens when you aren't open and you can't talk about your mental health and you leave it too late to try and get help. And for me, it's so important to keep conversations open about mental health and to talk about things, because I've seen the realities of when it's too late. So I hope this video has made some sort of sense. I hope that it's helped somebody out there. And again, I'm not doing this to try and bring sympathy or people to say, wow, you're so brave. I'm not brave at all. I'm passionate. You know, I love my dad. I will always love him and talk about him. And it's important that I talk about this because it was part of his story. So yeah, I'm going to go before I just get emotional again. But yeah, I hope this video has helped somebody out there. And please give this video a like, leave me a comment. If this is something that has hit home to you, feel free to send me a message on Instagram or a DM. They're always open to have conversations, to break down stigmas. So yes, thank you so much for watching if you've made it this far, and I shall catch you guys in my next video. I think it's going to be a good one. It should be a Devon holiday vlog, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Bye guys.